Medusa, daughter of Phorcys and Ceto, was unlike any other. Born of the sea's depths, she possessed a beauty so divine that even the gods took notice. Her golden hair cascaded like liquid sunlight, her eyes sparkled like the clearest ocean, and her presence alone could halt the breath of mortals. She was desired, admired, and envied. Yet, despite her enchanting allure, Medusa remained untouched by vanity. She was not one to indulge in the affections of men, nor did she revel in the attention bestowed upon her. Instead, she devoted herself to Athena, the revered goddess of wisdom and war. With unwavering admiration, she chose the path of sacred service, pledging her life to the goddess's temple. It was a noble calling, one that required purity, discipline, and an unbreakable vow of chastity. As a priestess, Medusa embodied grace and virtue. She performed rituals with delicate precision, her voice echoing like a celestial hymn within the temple walls. Every step she took, every prayer she whispered, was a tribute to the goddess she so deeply revered. Worshippers and strangers alike flocked to the temple, not only to seek Athena's blessings, but to catch a glimpse of the radiant priestess. Rumors of her beauty spread like wildfire, whispered through markets, palaces, and across the Aegean Sea. Some claimed she was a gift from the heavens, others, a mortal rival to the gods. Yet Medusa paid no heed to such talk, for her heart belonged only to Athena. Unbeknownst to her, this devotion, this perfection, would soon become her undoing. For in a world ruled by gods, beauty was both a blessing and a curse. And Medusa's fate was already sealed. Word of Medusa's beauty spread like whispers carried by the wind. Poets sang of her golden hair, which shimmered brighter than Apollo's sun, and her eyes, deep and enchanting as the Aegean Sea. Men and women alike marveled at her radiance, flocking to Athena's temple not in devotion to the goddess, but to steal a glimpse of her most captivating priestess. Each day, more visitors arrived, their prayers an afterthought to the sight of Medusa. Some fell to their knees in admiration, others spoke in hushed voices, daring to compare her beauty to that of Athena herself. One bold citizen, his voice echoing through the temple halls, declared that not even the goddess's own hair could rival Medusa's golden locks. Athena, seated high upon her celestial throne, heard their words. The praise of mortals should have pleased her, for Medusa was her priestess, her devoted servant. Yet envy, like a slow-burning ember, began to smolder within the goddess's heart. Though divine, Athena was not immune to jealousy. She watched as Medusa's name was spoken with awe, her beauty admired by all. A mortal, surpassing a goddess? The thought alone was an insult. Still, Athena did not act. She did not strike Medusa down, nor did she strip her of her grace. Instead, she waited, watching, her patience like a predator lurking in the shadows. Medusa, oblivious to the goddess's growing resentment, continued her service, never imagining that her greatest blessing, her beauty, had become a dangerous curse. She remained faithful, believing herself safe within the temple's sacred walls. But gods are not kind, and when the time came, Athena's wrath would be swift, cruel, and unforgiving. The waves crashed violently against the jagged rocks, the sea restless beneath the moon's pale light. Somewhere in the depths, Poseidon watched. He had seen her before, the golden-haired priestess who walked with divine grace, untouched by mortal desires. She was unlike any woman he had ever encountered, her beauty as boundless as the ocean itself. At first, he admired her from afar, but admiration quickly turned to obsession. He sent waves to whisper his name, let the tides call out to her, but Medusa remained unmoved. She belonged to Athena, body and soul, and she would not be swayed. Rejection was not something Poseidon knew. He was a god, feared, worshipped, obeyed. Yet Medusa denied him, time and time again, turning away from his unseen gaze. This only fueled his desire. He did not simply want her. He needed to possess her. One fateful evening, as the tide rolled in, Medusa wandered the shore, her thoughts lost in silent prayer. The salty breeze wove through her golden locks, and the waves lapped hungrily at her feet. That was when she felt it, a presence, ancient and powerful, rising from the abyss. She turned, but it was too late. Poseidon emerged from the sea, his form towering like a tempest, his eyes dark with intent. He spoke her name, his voice crashing like thunder against the shore. Medusa stepped back, her heart pounding. She had heard the stories, knew the gods were relentless when they desired something. She ran. Her feet carried her to the only place she believed sacred enough to protect her, Athena's temple. She burst through the doors, her breath ragged, her hands trembling as she fell before the goddess's statue. "Please," she whispered, "help me." But the temple, grand and holy, remained silent. The doors slammed open behind her. Poseidon entered, his presence swallowing the room whole. The flickering torches trembled as shadows danced along the stone walls. Medusa's plea for mercy was lost in the howling wind as he seized her. The walls bore witness to the crime. The statue of Athena, cold and unyielding, stood unmoved. And when it was over, Medusa lay broken beneath the goddess's gaze, her cries swallowed by the temple's hollow silence. She had sought refuge in Athena's sanctuary. But the gods, cruel and indifferent, had never intended to save her. The temple was silent, yet the air crackled with unseen fury. The scent of burning oil and incense filled the vast chamber, the torches flickering in their sconces. Medusa lay upon the cold marble floor, her body trembling, her spirit shattered. The sacred walls had not protected her, nor had the goddess she had served so faithfully. She had called for Athena, begged for her mercy, but the goddess had not answered. Now she appeared. The torches flared as Athena's form took shape, her presence filling the chamber like a gathering storm. Clad in gleaming bronze, her spear in hand, she descended from her celestial throne, her expression a mask of wrath. Her gaze fell upon Medusa, who lifted her tear-streaked face, still shaking from the horror of what had been done to her. "Defiler!" Athena's voice rang out, sharp as a blade. Medusa's breath hitched. "Goddess, please," she whispered. "I sought your protection." Athena's eyes burned like molten gold. "You have disgraced my temple," she declared. "You have allowed impurity to taint this sacred ground." Shock and devastation filled Medusa's heart. "Allowed?" she repeated, barely above a whisper. "I did not." "Silence!" Athena's voice thundered through the temple, her anger a force of its own. "You have drawn the desire of a god. You have invited his gaze upon you. You, with your beauty, have caused this dishonor." Medusa's lips parted, but no words came. The injustice of it crushed her, the betrayal sharper than any blade. She had served Athena with unwavering devotion, had dedicated her life to her goddess, and yet now, she was the one to bear the blame. The goddess lifted her spear, pointing it at the broken woman before her. "You who have used your beauty to tempt the divine shall have it no longer." A terrible force surged through the temple, the air thick with divine power. Medusa's body arched, a scream tearing from her throat as pain, raw and merciless, consumed her. Her golden locks writhed and twisted, transforming into living serpents, their scales gleaming under the torchlight. Her once enchanting eyes burned, cursed with a deadly power, one that would turn any who dared meet them into stone. Medusa collapsed, gasping, her hands clawing at her new monstrous form. She was no longer a woman, no longer a priestess. She was a creature, a thing to be feared and hunted. Athena turned, her judgment passed, and left her to her fate. The curse had cast Medusa into the shadows, exiling her to a forsaken land where even the bravest dared not tread. The days of whispered admiration were gone. Now, only fear spoke her name. Warriors sought her, not for love, but for blood, hoping to claim her head as a trophy. Yet none who entered her domain left alive. Her eyes, once full of warmth, now bore death itself. One look, and men turned to cold, unfeeling stone, frozen in their final, terrified moments. The serpents that coiled atop her head hissed in unison, their presence a constant reminder of Athena's cruel punishment. Medusa had become the monster they all feared. Then came Perseus. Sent by the gods, armed with gifts from Olympus itself, he ventured into the cursed land where she dwelled. He carried a shield polished to a mirror's gleam, a blade sharp enough to sever fate itself. Guided by the gods, he crept through the ruins of those who had come before him, stepping over statues that once had breath. Medusa, weary of endless solitude, stood within her cavern, her mind heavy with grief. She did not seek battle. She no longer cared for vengeance. Yet fate was relentless. She heard him before she saw him, the soft shuffle of feet against stone, the measured breath of a warrior trained for the hunt. Her serpents hissed, sensing danger. She turned, expecting to meet another desperate fool's gaze, to watch yet another body stiffen into lifeless rock. But Perseus never met her eyes. He watched her reflection in his shield, his grip tightening around the celestial blade, and then, swift as the striking of a viper, he struck. Cold steel met cursed flesh, a gasp, a shudder, the whisper of severed locks, the final hiss of dying serpents. Medusa's body collapsed, her once beautiful face now still, her curse finally silenced. Yet, from her death, life emerged. The blood that spilled from her neck shimmered with divine power. From it, the mighty winged horse, Pegasus, rose into the sky, his wings beating like thunder. Beside him stood Chrysaor, the giant born of tragedy, his fate yet unwritten. Medusa, once a woman of beauty, once a victim, once a monster, was no more. Perseus took her head, the gods rejoiced, and history called him a hero. But the stones that lined her cave remained, a silent testament to the woman she had once been, and the curse she had never deserved.